Xperia 1 Mark 7 is the latest camera phone from Sony, and Sony is one of those companies that has a dedicated fan base. The Vivo X200 Ultra, on the other hand, is from Vivo, and even though Vivo is not as big of a brand as the Sony, they're using Sony sensor with Zeiss coating on them, two well-known brands to any photographer. This is Mo. Welcome to Tech Mo, and today I'm going to compare the Xperia 1 Mark 7 to the Vivo X200 Ultra from the camera to battery, performance, and design. The Xperia 1 Mark 7 has a 6.5-inch display, which is one of the smallest display sizes in flagship phones. The main reason for that is the notchless design and the bezels on top to hide the selfie camera. The back houses three cameras, the classic ultra-wide, wide, and telephoto lenses, with the ultra-wide getting a new large camera sensor, while the zoom lens is a continuous one. On top, you have a headphone jack, and Xperia is the last flagship phone keeping this option. On the bottom, you have the SIM card tray that can be opened without a tool, since you will probably use it more than on other phones, as it also houses the SD card. You also have a shutter button on the side, plus the power button, which works as a fingerprint scanner. The Vivo, on the other hand, has an ultrasonic fingerprint scanner, and the display is slightly curved. It has a higher resolution and a larger display at 6.8 inches. The back houses three cameras with a large camera bump, since there is a crazy large telephoto sensor. On the side, you have an interesting camera button that can also be used to zoom in and out of a subject. Despite the Xperia having a smaller display, it is not shorter than the Vivo because of the bezels. Both phones create gorgeous HDR colors, and I'm very happy with the display quality since they are both 10-bit panels. One thing both phones have in common is the Zeiss T-Star branding on their cameras, since they're using high-quality glass. But Vivo went one step further and also created its color science together with Zeiss. There are multiple modes on the Vivo, such as Zeiss Natural, Vivid, and Textured, and the Vivo X200 Ultra has also some additional color profiles like the filmic look. The Sony Xperia does not need to team up with Zeiss, since they are themselves pioneers in color science. In Sony, you also have no picture profile, neutral, vivid, filmic, and other options. I took this photo at a rather late Holi festival. The Zeiss natural color compared to no picture profile is more muted, but in a good way. I do feel the Sony is warming the colors a bit too much in this case. If we move to the vivid mode on both phones, the Vivo increases the vividness a bit, while Sony increases the saturation by a large margin. It may work great in some cases, but probably not the best choice when it comes to skin tones. For the filmic look, which is my favorite, both are doing great. The Vivo filmic filter is a bit dreamy, and the colors are washed out, but in a good way, while Sony creates more of a retro mood. The main lens on the Vivo X200 Ultra is 35mm, while on Sony it is 24mm full frame equivalent. The 35mm lens captures more natural body and face proportion compared to the 24mm one. But it also means the objects will look closer to the camera if you take the picture from the same distance on Vivo compared to the Xperia. The Vivo also has a slightly larger sensor with a smaller f-stop, 1.7 instead of 1.9, which means you get better bokeh and background blur. The processing is also very different. The Vivo applies more HDR and tries to expose everything more uniformly, while the Xperia looks more like a photo taken from a dedicated camera. For example, here you can see that the background on the Vivo is blue and exposed correctly using computational photography, while the Xperia is not applying those algorithms. When it comes to video with the main lens, apart from the focal length, the main difference is the exposure, where the Xperia is a bit darker and less exposed, while the Vivo is brighter in general. When it comes to the telephoto lens, the Xperia has a continuous zoom starting from 85mm and going all the way to 170mm, while the Vivo has a fixed 85mm lens. But the lens on the Vivo is much larger than the Xperia's. This means on the Vivo you get much better background blur and bokeh. Also, even though at longer zoom levels like 170mm the Vivo has to crop, you still don't lose much quality compared to the Xperia, and the images are still sharp. Things change a bit at even longer zooms like 230mm though, and here I find the Xperia photos to be sharper compared to the Vivo. The downside is that you don't get much background blur. Of course, you can use portrait mode on both phones, like I did here, to create an artificial background blur, and they are both doing a decent job at it. You can also use the telephoto lens on both phones to take telephoto macro shots. They both take great shots, but the processing is also a little bit different. The Xperia is more exposed on the subject, whereas the Vivo is more uniformly exposed. The Vivo also has a larger ultra-wide lens with a wider focal length of 14mm instead of 16mm, which means you can fit more into the frame. The photos from both ultra-wide lenses are great, and they are of a better optical quality than other flagship phones like the Galaxy S25 Ultra and iPhone 16 Pro Max. For video with ultra-wide lens, similar to the main lens, the Xperia is darker, while the Vivo by default exposes the video more and produces a brighter scene. I almost never use the selfie camera myself, but if you are curious, the Vivo selfie camera is wider and the picture has raised shadows, while the Xperia is more contrasty. For night photos with the main lens, they are both doing a great job, and the difference is that the Vivo is raising the shadows here too. But for the ultra-wide lens, the Vivo is exposing the picture much better. It is less noisy, and also if we zoom in, you will notice the picture is much more detailed compared to the one coming out of the Xperia. Also, as a side note, both ones have face and eye tracking for focusing on the subject. I never had any issues with the Vivo, but at least on the viewfinder, the Sony Xperia looks better at detecting the subject and autofocus, which is something Sony is famous for in their camera lineup too. On the other hand, the Vivo X200 Ultra supports log, which is a great color profile to color grade your footage. Vivo log is hands down the best log I've ever seen on a phone, and it is super easy to color grade. Neither phone is MagSafe, but you can simply put a MagSafe case on them, similar to what I've done here with my Galaxy, to attach accessories like TicNote, the sponsor of today's video. TicNote is an AI-powered note-taking tool, and it is one of the greatest tech pieces I've gotten recently. The interface is super simple. You can turn the device on to start recording audio, and you can switch between recording ambience or voice calls with a simple toggle. The device itself is incredibly light, and it's just the size of a credit card. I usually carry it with a magnetic case and use it for taking notes or just gathering my thoughts. Then I'll use the app, which also accessible on the web, to look at the summary of my notes. You can also access the transcript itself, and the transcript is very accurate based on my experience. You can use the Deep Research tab to deep dive into topics in the transcript, or use the mind map, my favorite feature, to have a visualization of your thoughts that you just recorded. I'll put the link to the device in the description. It is definitely one of my favorite devices of all time. It is also very affordable. Go to the link in the description and get yours right away. When it comes to software, the Vivo X200 Ultra is running Origin OS. There is no global version of it, and that's the only option you get. The Xperia is running a vanilla version of Android, and it is the most bloat-free device I've ever tested. Even the default apps are only installed if you permit them during the setup process. But that also means you get more options on the Vivo compared to the Xperia. For example, even the camera app on the Vivo is much more feature-rich. For example, it supports log and a bunch of other options in the video mode. It supports many more filter systems compared to the Xperia, and it even has modes like street photography, which the Xperia lacks. For performance, they are both running the Snapdragon 8 Elite, but from my experience, Xperia phones usually restrict the processor a bit and optimize for thermals and battery life. In the Geekbench test, the Vivo gets a slightly better scores in both multi-core and single-core, but nothing that would make a real difference in actual usage. Testing the graphics with 3D Mark, the Vivo got a much better score compared to the Xperia. It got around 6,600, while the Xperia got around 5,800. But again, unless you are doing some crazy heavy task, you won't notice a difference in performance. Regarding battery life, the Xperia has a 5,000 mAh battery, while the Vivo has a 6,000 mAh one with new battery technology. So it doesn't add weight to the phone. In real life, I did everything you saw in this video in a day, outdoors and indoors, on a mix of 5G and Wi-Fi with 3 hours and 20 minutes of screen on time, plus 16 hours of standby. The Xperia ended with 45%, while the Vivo ended with 61%. So no surprise here. Overall, if you want to have the best phone camera, there is nothing better than the Vivo X200 Ultra, especially since they are using the 35mm lens, which is much more natural than the typical 24mm one. You will also get better battery life. On the other hand, the Xperia offers a much cleaner Android experience. It gives you a headphone jack and an SD card, something you don't find anywhere else. You also get more of a DSLR look in your photos, and they are definitely less processed. On top of that, you can use the phone in your Sony camera ecosystem and use it as a viewfinder. You can also look at other options like the Galaxy S25 Ultra. If you enjoyed this video, watch the comparison of Xperia 1 Mark 7 versus Galaxy S25 Ultra next. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for tuning into Techmo, and I will see you in the next one.